Hola a todos, soy Pamela de Asian Boss. Si eres fanático o fanática de la cultura pop coreana, probablemente te has preguntado cómo será salir con una persona coreana. Pero ¿cómo es la realidad comparado con las novelas que vemos? Como parte de nuestra serie sobre tener citas en Asia, anteriormente le preguntamos a un grupo de estadounidenses viviendo en China sobre sus experiencias. Esta vez hicimos lo mismo, pero con un grupo de estadounidenses viviendo en Corea. ¿Cuáles fueron las mayores dificultades y desafíos que debieron vivir al tener citas en este país? Vamos a averiguarlo.
So hi, where are you from and how long have you been living in Korea?
Hi, I'm Zach and I'm from America. So I've been living here for 13 years.
I'm American. I've been living in Korea for about 4 years.
I'm from Kansas in the United States. I've been living in Korea for about 1.5 years, a little over 1.5 years.
I'm from Chicago, Illinois, and I've been in Korea on and off since around 2009.
I'm from the United States and I've been living in Seoul like 2 years and a few months.
So I'm from Brooklyn and I've been living in Korea for 4 years now.
I'm from America. I'm from North Carolina. I've been living here for years. I got here the first time in 2005, 2006.
I'm from California, so the United States, and I've been in Korea a little over 2 years.
Today we want to find out a little bit about what dating culture and dating life is like in Korea for Americans. So are you interested in meeting Koreans?
I'm actually married to one, so yes, for sure.
I think it depends on compatibility, not nationality, but I do know that there is a certain attraction here to the guys, so yeah.
Yes, quite interested. My current boyfriend is Korean. When I came here, I was kind of open to dating anyone, Korean or any other race. It just so happened that I dated more Koreans.
Yes, since I'm here and the majority is Korean, so most of the guys that I have dated have been Korean. Yes.
If I may ask, how many people have you dated and what was your dating experience like? What was your longest relationship?
So I'm only dated casually, so like been on a lot of dates, but there's been like 2 guys that I've dated for like 3 months, maybe that was the longest. Nothing serious. It was still very casual, yeah.
Like I'm married already, so yeah.
How long have you been married?
7 years.
How did you meet and for how long did you date?
We met like working at the same company, and then we dated for like 4 years until we got married. So when I first saw her, I just saw like the back of her head, and I was like, I don't know why, but going into our first orientation, I was like, that's the one. That's the one. And then from there on, I just like focused on it.
From your experience, do you think Koreans are open to dating Americans?
Nowadays, yeah, they're open. It's actually a stereotype. Me and a whole bunch of friends, we make jokes. You know, there's the E2 visa, a lot of foreigners on it. Soldiers got social status. Seems like a lot of them have girlfriends, and so I joke around, to get an E2 visa, you got to have a Korean girlfriend. So these days, yeah, I think Koreans are open.
I think that a lot of Koreans are open to dating Americans, but at the same time, there are ones that are just not open to dating anyone else other than Koreans. I mean, it's hard to say which one is more than the other. I think probably more Koreans are less open to dating Americans, but it's changing nowadays.
So, of course, in every place, every country, there's conservatism and liberalism, and there's varying degrees of that across any society. You know, Korea is not as closed off as it used to be, and a long time ago. And my in-laws, for example, my mother-in-law, my father-in-law, they were very okay with the idea of their son marrying me. They've never hesitated for a second to like welcome me or to take care of me.
So what do you think is the perception of Koreans in terms of dating Americans?
I think there are 2 main perceptions. One is kind of, I would say, the more poor stereotype, where they're dating Americans for fun. They're not actually interested in dating for a relationship. They're interested in practicing English. They are dating an American to say, oh, I dated an American once. Or, oh, look at my foreign girlfriend. They're more interested in the foreignness of us and the language abilities of us than our actual selves.
Sometimes when I go on dates with men my age or around my age, some of them still treat me in the stereotypical way, and some of them don't, genuinely don't. So most of the media that depicts foreign women, especially American women, they portray women and usually in a single attitude mind way, like wild, crazy. Korean men who consume this type of content, and only this type of content, whether it comes from porn, traditional Hollywood movies, or TV shows, if that's all they see, then of course their behaviors will reflect that.
I've been told, rather, that like a lot of times Korean people don't really take relationships with foreigners seriously because there's like a whole culture difference, and like there's a whole thing like foreigners aren't real people kind of thing. So with that, I feel like I haven't had the best experiences with like Korean people. But the thing is, you get to learn what are the telltale signs, and like you kind of get to like cut it off quick before it gets too serious when you start noticing those signs, which is why I don't have many boyfriends.
What are some of the telltale signs?
Oh, like, what color are your chest stickers? You know what I'm talking about. They're like, what color are they? And I'm like, what? Why is that a thing? And it'll be like really intrusive, kind of like sexually explicit questions that they know they would never ask to a Korean person. And it comes with this whole like idea that like foreigners are like open-minded, and not in the Western version of saying open-minded, because when we say open-minded, we mean like we're open to like new philosophies and like perspectives of thinking, but like here in Korea, open-minded means like you're DTF.
What about for Americans? Like, what do you think the perception is of like Americans when you say, oh, you're dating a Korean?
I think most people assume if you're dating a Korean that you're a Korea boo. Like they assume like you just love everything about pop culture or dramas or something. Like literally, if you tell someone, a foreigner, that you're like dating a Korean or like married to a Korean, you kind of see this look on their face. Like they kind of made some judgment about you. Like, oh, you're dating a Korean, you must be one of those people.
I think if you are abroad and looking inward to Korea about dating Korean men, I think really the only people we see are idols, movie stars, Korean drama actors, people like on the commercials or talk shows. I don't think we really get to see enough of the average Korean man and the average Korean girl. I think that sometimes expectations are very skewed from abroad. And even I experienced that coming here, and I had previously lived in a different Asian country, and so I know things are not how I see them in the media.
So what was your expectation of dating in Korea like before, and how did it kind of reflect in reality?
Before coming to Korea, I've heard, because I've had friends who lived here before I moved here, so I've heard that Koreans look to date foreigners as like a trophy type thing, or like, ooh, I've dated or slept with a foreigner. So I kind of, going into it, like coming to Korea, I kind of had that in my mind, like try to be like careful, not like fall for like these F-boys and like stuff like that. So, as I've dated in here, in Korea, I have experienced that, like being like a fetish kind of, or people thinking that I'm like a strong black woman, and they're like, can you do all these crazy weird things to me? And I'm like, no.
I was dating this guy. He was only specifically interested in black women of a certain shape and size that I have. I introduced him to my friends when I felt like I was comfortable with it. And there was one point where he met one of my friends who was bigger than me, and he was like, I need you to be her size. And I was like, what? What do you mean? What? And he's like, no, like you're really pretty, but like I'm more attracted to your friend now. So if you want me to like stop being attracted to her, you need to be the same size as her. And I was like, wait, how did we even get here? Like, I'm so confused. So I was like, no, that's not a thing. And like, if you feel like that's, what kind of like governs whether we're gonna be together or not, I'm good. And he was like, I can't believe you're this selfish. You're gonna be this selfish to me. I've told you what I wanted and you still don't want to do it. And I'm like, oh, you're crazy. Okay, got it. Okay, please, bye. So I thought that was the end of it. And then 3 months later, he was like, have you gotten any bigger yet? And I was like, block. Wow, that is so creepy. That's so scary. How is that a thing? And then I told some of my Korean guy friends, and they were like, sounds about right. Sounds about, there are some people like that.
As an American here in Korea, do you feel that it's easy to meet new Korean people? And if yes, where and how would you meet these Korean people?
Yeah, I think it's definitely easy to meet people. I've met a bunch of different Korean people in a bunch of different ways, like through soccer or just through other friends that I meet, or through like just coming in, like going to a bar and meeting a friend, and then you meet their friends like the next week. So I think it's really easy if you're just a nice person. So if you're like a nice person and honest, it's gonna be fine.
Before COVID, I liked to meet people like naturally, like in a bar, or like just going out. But so like my first year here in like 2019, that's like how I met people. And I was also on like online dating. But now since COVID, I feel like online dating is like kind of like the only way now.
So their behavior is very black and white. If we met through a mutual friend or met at an event, they would be a lot more respectful and polite. Whereas if we met like on a dating app or randomly on the street, their behaviors are very different by asking a lot of inappropriate and rude questions that at first glance it's like, oh, would you ask this to a Korean woman? One time I went on a date with this one guy, and he invited me out to dinner and said, oh, I know a place. And I'm like, okay, cool. Local, knows the place. So we walk and we turn a corner and he takes me to Burger King. As I was eating a hamburger, he asked me, oh, I heard American women shave down there. And then he looked down, looked back up. Do you do that too? And I'm like, what? Like here, and I've never felt so fetishized in terms of who an American is, eating at Burger King, eating a hamburger, asking these very straightforward questions. And I thought, and then the rest of the conversation was about American culture, what Americans do or don't do. And so I thought, all right, this is not a date. You don't want to know about me, you want to know about where I come from.
What was one of your maybe biggest cultural shock or differences that you encountered?
Trying to take your 35-year-old girlfriend out on a date at 7 p.m. at night, got to ask mom and dad for permission. That was a big one. I let her go and do whatever she wants. And apparently that's not a thing. You always got to report to your Korean significant other, I'm here. You can't do that, you can't do that. This is what I've heard, but I let her do what she wants. You can't control somebody.
Koreans are more blunt. So one time, this guy I met online, when we met in person, he was like, oh, wow, I thought you were going to be fat. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, your pictures, you look really big in your pictures. I thought you were going to be bigger. He was like, you're so skinny. And I'm like, what? And then he was like, you should edit your pictures because that's how Korean girls do it. Or the Koreans, we edit our pictures so we look better. And I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. And he looked completely different. He did edit way too much, and I thought he was gonna look different, and I was like, surprised.
At least in my experience, everything was just matter of fact. You don't like the way they look. You say something about what they look like. You say something about what they have, and I don't know if it's necessarily done in a teasing manner, but I just remember just looking inward and thinking, oh man, do I really look that bad? Am I really dressing that terribly? But whereas in America, I feel it's less judgmental. I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but I just remembered, you could literally go to a cafe in a t-shirt and jeans, and that's a date. But in Korea, it's not so much a date, it's just more of meeting with friends, and a date would be, wearing something really nice. And well, more traditional, bringing out flowers, the cheesy stuff that everybody likes, right? So I think that was what was so shocking for me, the difference that I saw.
Korean dating culture is so fast. They do it the inverse way. In America, you meet someone, you go on a few dates with them before you start to decide to date. In Korea, it's it's backwards. You date, you meet someone, maybe you go on 1 or 2 dates. Then they say, let's be boyfriend and girlfriend. And then they decide to start to get to know each other. And it feels so shocking. Also, they say I love you really fast, but I like to point out to anyone who sees this, they say I love you, not that they don't mean it, but because there's not that many words to express romantic feeling in Korean.
Was there anything that you did that ended up shocking your Korean partner?
I took a shower once a day. It freaked him out. He's like, you're not gonna take 2 or 3 showers a day? I'm like, if I take 2 or 3 showers a day, my skin will shrivel up and die. And he doesn't use lotion. So from my perspective, he's the crazy one. But he's like, you need to take a shower when you come home. You need to take a shower in the morning. You need to take a shower every time you come in the door. I'm like, sir, no.
So I'm open about sexual health. So I'm always before we hook up or whatever, I'm like, do you get tested? Have you gone tested? And I've had guys who are shocked that I'm asking, but then are like, oh no, don't worry, I've never gone tested. I'm clean. I'm like, in their mind, they think you get tested when you're not quote unquote clean. And they're like, don't worry, I've never been tested. I don't need to get tested. I'm like, ooh, what? So I think they get shocked that I'm open to ask that.
The way that I sat, they thought that I sat like a playboy, because sometimes I like to relax, so I would lean back or cross my legs, and that I felt they gave a kind of negative perception of me because of that. They thought I was too relaxed.
So what do you think was the most challenging aspect of dating a Korean person?
There seems to be more of a higher expectation. I think Korean men set the bar really high. For example, if I were to go on a first date, I feel that I have a higher expectation that I need to meet because, Korea is a very lookism type of country, right? So I have to look a certain way, I have to be a certain height, I have to be a certain build, I have to wear certain clothes, I have to be stylistic and fashionable too. I have to be more of a provider, I guess, because in Korean society, we're very traditional, right? The man has to provide for everything. I mean, nowadays it's changing, but at least when I first started dating in Korea back in 2009, that's the expectation that I was getting.
I have a lot of platonic guy friends, a lot of them who I've had for a very, very long time. And they'd be like, who are you on the phone with? I'm like, oh, my best friend back home. And they're like, a man? You have a man? He is a male, and he's your friend? You guys dated, didn't you? And I'm like, no, we've literally never even seen each other like that. And he's like, it's a lie. It has to be a lie. Because there's no way on this God-green earth that someone who is the opposite gender of you can be your friend for that long. I'm like, it's really common in Western countries, actually. It doesn't have to be that way. And they're like, I don't believe you. You're lying. You're cheating on me with him. I'm like, how? We're literally 11,000 kilometers away from each other.
The biggest thing that I encountered was conflict resolution. What I can gather culturally, whether it was at work or dating someone, it's better to just left some things unsaid or kind of go around about to get what you want from someone or the solution that you want. Whereas I'm pretty bullheaded. I will say, this is what I want, point blank. Or I will say, you did this, I'm offended. I really butt heads a lot here. I would say that's probably one way that I think I can never change for this country.
So overall, what has your dating experience taught you about Korean culture?
That they're more open than people think. I think a lot of people think Koreans are conservative, which I think some are, but some are really crazy, and are very open and want to try new things.
It's taught me that a lot of the core values that families have are very similar. They're just expressed in different ways. And growing up in America versus coming here, which can almost be seen as like the West and the East and very opposite cultures, we're so much more similar than I probably would have ever thought. In the core, you want to meet somebody you like, have those really deep feelings, and then you have the obstacles like family, language. And even in the States, like if two people come from very different backgrounds, there's different vernaculars they're from, there's different worlds they're from, whether that be socioeconomic or even just like how you grew up and like the interests you had versus being American and Korean. I think sometimes having a cross-cultural relationship and forcing you to have better communication makes cross-cultural relationships stronger than same culture relationships.